If I don't need it, then I don't need it. If I need it for the tech, I'm happy to wait for it. Okay, awesome. Apparently everybody can hear me. Good morning. Good morning. Yes. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the second Mayor's Office Disability Summit. We're thrilled that each of you could join us here this morning in person, and thank you, Carson, as you mentioned. This is a virtual hybrid event as well, so we have some people joining us from wherever they are, making this a truly accessible event, which is really exciting, and we want to see more of that going forward so we can open our doors to as many folks as possible. If you're in the room and you want to have access to our landing page, which has some resources on it, everybody can go to bit.ly/second with a 2ND Disability Summit, and that will bring you to our landing page. The folks who are panelists today have shared amazing resources with us, which will be available to folks there. So we encourage everybody to utilize that website throughout the day and going forward. I want to acknowledge some folks in the room who have made the time to be here today, in addition to our amazing panelists who we will get to as we go through the day. I want to thank Deputy Chancellor Quintana, who will be here in a few, I believe, I think around 10:30ish. So we're very excited to have her with us, as well as Chancellor David Banks is joining us virtually online. So we are thrilled that each of them have supported this event, and it was actually the Chancellor who committed to hosting this today. So we're very excited. We have Chief of Special Education Christina Foti with us. If we can take a moment to honor her. We also have Deputy Chief of Special Education John Hammer, as well as all the folks you see running around. Many of them are members of our senior leadership team in the special education office. So thank you to each of you for putting on your helper hats today and helping to welcome everybody and make this possible. Our digital landing page has an Ask a Panelist button. So if you're in the room, you can actually use that to submit questions. We are not taking live questions today. So we have a ton of ground to cover in not a lot of time, and we want to make sure we have time for all the panelists to share the things that they've prepared. But we are collecting questions, and we are absolutely committed to getting back to everybody today. So if you have something, go ahead and submit it through the panelist link or the Ask a Panelist link, excuse me. Or there are also comment cards on the tables, which we will be collecting, and committed to circling back with everyone that way. The online panelists it's a Google form, right?
Yep.
And it works from a phone?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So someone will get back to you after today. For people who are joining online, if you need captions, you can click auto closed captioning at the bottom of the screen. This is a live transcription that's available. There's also auto translation on Zoom if you're joining online, so you can use that feature as well. We will not be using the chat function on the Zoom, so please be aware that you need to use that Ask a Panelist Google form in order to get your question answered. So just want to redirect everybody there. The chat is disabled for today. Our live stream is going to end after the third panel, so I think at that time folks online can sign off. We're going to do a little bit of mingling here in person. You're welcome to hang around and get to know the people in the room. And that's going to be the order of the day. So I think I covered everything logistic-wise. If you're in the room, restrooms are around the corner. We've got plenty of food and drinks here to keep you full throughout the day. And I'm going to be with you until we close out. All right, so. Hey. So to get started, goes without saying that we would not be in this amazing space without our friends at My Time. Who are doing incredible things in our community. So I want to go ahead. Yes. I'm gonna introduce Lucina Clark to give us some opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to our beautiful space and the beautiful artwork. All the artwork here from individuals with autism. So even if you're interested in purchasing, the monies go to the individuals. And thanks to who I here today, let's communicate. You're having a food, coffee, tea. Let's have the discussion that we should. We're going to talk about language. How appropriate is the language we use, not only to ourselves, but to our families and the communities we serve. We talk about communication. How do we communicate? You know, communication is either verbal, non-verbal, expressive, no language. There are so many ways of communication. We talk about getting the right community organizations and advocates out there. Travel training. Our parents need to understand our kids will be independent and they need to explore these options. We talk about education, what's happening, how are we changing or transforming the system so our children or our families can have that productive, functional social life. I'm so happy talking from early intervention all the way to adulthood, because our kids do grow up. Parents, they grow up. They don't say that cute little baby from 0 to 3. You know, and then the services change. I always say happily married from 0 to 3, partial divorce from 3 to 5, divorce totally when it comes to the higher grades, you know, and for the older parent and for the older adults. So let's be cognitive of what we're doing today. Let's have that dialogue. I'm so excited that DOE and Christina and her team, oh my gosh, Carson and Stephanie and Rachel, they have worked so hard with us to create this. Give them a round of applause, please. And for all the agency here, whether it's OPWDD, which is I am a provider. I'm a very unusual, unique provider, because I don't always listen to rules. That's okay, that's who I am. I like to break rules. I enjoy breaking rules. It is very good to break rules. I'm not a yes person. I've never been a yes person. My husband and I are married for 36 years, and he has survived, which is a good thing. So I know for some people out there, we have to be politically correct. I am Lucina Clark. I am the executive director and co-founder of My Timing. I'm a black, beautiful, sexy Caribbean woman. I am wearing a fuchsia dress, pink and purple eyeshadows, I think it is. I think it's a purple lipstick, and I'm just amazing. So I'm not going to change myself as that. So I want to thank you all for being here. Let's just have discussions, let's have some fun. I know it's a little tight, we're trying to make it so cozy and acceptable, and you know, so just bear with us. It's our first summit here. We want to have it in a community, in a hub, where people feel comfortable enough to come and have a conversation. So I'm so amazed with all the people in the panels who are here. I thank you for taking your time to be here. And yes, we're going to have some fun. I don't like boring things. I'm always excited, you know. So let's have some fun. Thank you all for taking the time. What is work? Those on the view virtually, we welcome you to our beautiful space. Make sure you see all the beautiful pictures and the people having conversations. So thank you all. Thank you, Rachel, for being our MC. I am so honored. You know, we are so honored to have you at our house. Thank you. Thank you.
Going to get started. We have our language initiative panelists up first. So I'm going to invite those folks to go ahead and come up to, I don't know, is this a dais? Come up to the dais and get comfortable, and we'll start in a little under 5 minutes.
Rachel, do you want to move a chair so there's some room for Friedman. I am a white, non-binary, 40-something, autistic educator and adult. I have a wave of brown hair sticking up and hazel eyes, and I'm wearing a white button-down shirt with a gray vest. I'm the Director of Education for PINE, which is the Program for Inclusion and Neurodiversity Education, and we coach teachers all over the country. And I'm also an adjunct professor at NYU, and I have a small educational consulting business.
Hi, my name is Juliet Ullman. I am a pale, white, 40-something woman with dark brown hair, up in a twist. I have lightning bolt earrings and a black and white polka dot vest. My pronouns are she, her. I am neurodivergent, and I have a child who is neurodivergent, and I'm binary, and I am the Director of External Comms for New York City Public Schools.
And I am Josh Stern. I'm a 20-year-old, white male who is sitting in a white motorized wheelchair, and I am wearing a dark blue polo shirt and gray slacks. And I am a consultant for the New York City Public Schools Special Education Office. So it's lovely to see you all here today. And I wanted to thank Ms. Clark for her opening remarks, and particularly for her focus on language, because that's what we're all here to talk to you about today. So thank you for that, and I wanted to extend a quick thank you to our panelists for being here. Thank you, Juliet, and thank you, Cade. Oh, and I forgot, my pronouns are he, him. And before we get started, I wanted to begin by sharing a multi-year initiative that I have led in partnership with the Division of Specialized Instruction and Student Support and our Special Education Advisory Council to build anti-ableist culture through our Inclusive and Interdependent Language Initiative, IILI. And in line with Ms. Clark's thinking about communication, right, we believe that fundamentally the way that we talk about folks is the way that we think about them. So we believe that fundamentally we need to begin to change the way we think about folks by changing the way that we talk about them in language. So when we use discriminatory language, we send this message that there is a group that is the primary group, and there's a group that is an other. There's something that needs to be fixed, there's something that needs to be changed, and that is simply not the case. So we have embarked on this initiative with the following theory of action. By creating a glossary, and forgive me for looking at my notes here, I'm just reading the theory of action. By creating a glossary of inclusive terminology that matches student preference and best practice, and implementing these language changes both internally at the DOE and externally with the families and students that we serve, we can help create an environment that is truly inclusive and interdependent at its core. And let's take a moment to reflect on that. Right? We are seeking an environment that is truly inclusive and interdependent, where we're able to use communication to depend on each other. So a bit more on the glossary itself. The glossary is formatted as a say this, not this document, where you have a list of terms that are commonly said that need to be changed, and a list of alternatives. And several of these have explanatory notes that go a little bit more deeply into why these things are changed. This is one of the primary resources for this panel, and so for the folks that have gone to that link that Rachel very kindly mentioned at the beginning of our panel, you should be able to see this document, and I encourage you to take a moment to explore it. But I wanted to take a second to share 3 things that we want you to walk away from this experience with, right? And we want you to do. The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to share the glossary and related materials with your community, right? Community is a key word today. We're trying to get the word out to our families. We're trying to, break down the barriers that exist between agency and community, and really think about this work collectively. We want you to discuss the terms of the glossary and possible changes and additions with your community. And this is a key portion because this glossary is meant to be a living document, right? Though today is the first day that many of you here are seeing this document, we commit to changing it on a regular basis in line with stakeholder feedback, because language is never truly still. And we want to acknowledge that change. So please, share, once you've shared, discuss terms, and always defer to the way that people want to be referred to, right? This is a beginning, not an end. And then finally, we want you to incorporate the terms from the glossary into your practice. And with that, I will turn it back over to our lovely panelists who will be answering some questions about how this has affected their work. And so I guess I'll start with a very broad one. What do you feel is the relationship between how we refer to people and how we think about them?
Okay. I think that I would echo a lot of what you had started off with, which is that the language that we use is capable of other people in our immediate vicinity. And as part of that, it's actually taken me a while to understand and absorb the nature of describing myself and describing what I look like and very specific adjectives to describe myself, because it felt that I was setting myself apart in a very specific way. And I think that one of the things that a lot of us need to understand is that when you don't distinguish, you erase people's identities, and you also assume a default. You assume that everybody fits into some internalized assumption of what your mental picture of normal or a student or a family is, and everybody has a multi-layered experience that I think that it's respectful to acknowledge. And in relation to that, I think that it's very important for me. I find it very interesting to be on this panel because I don't consider myself an expert in this area. I consider myself a student and an enforcer. That my job is always to listen to what families are telling me, what my content experts in the Division of Specialized Education are telling me, what we're hearing from people themselves that live these lives and have these challenges, so that we are reflecting that, rather than I'm going out and saying this is the language that we're going to use. My job is, and once we've established that language, and once we've had that conversation, then my job is to go out and enforce that essentially among my colleagues and say this is how our agency speaks about it. A number of these terminologies we've already incorporated into how we in Central Communications speak about things, but one of the things that I think is really important here is it's an evolving process, and we're always taking on that feedback and learning from the community what's changed, what feels different, how we should adjust, and don't just stick with, oh, well, 5 years ago we had this conversation, everybody said, this is how or the people we were speaking to at the time said this is how we should refer to things. So I really appreciate it being an iterative process.
So I think about this question a lot, and the relationship between how we speak about people and how we think about them, and how the way you speak about someone can change how you think about them. And I often come back to different racial groups, religious groups who've had slurs used against them throughout history, and that the language that's chosen by that community is then what is asked of the rest of the world. And so I think echoing what both of you have said, that looking to the disability community, to the neurodivergent community for the language that feels most affirming, and using that across city agencies, right, across media representation, across everywhere, is what changes people's view, right, and makes it that we're not other. And one of the pieces of the glossary that I think is so important is the distinction between non-speaking and nonverbal.
Yeah.
And a lot of the way that we talk about people who are non-speaking is to say nonverbal. And it has a connotation that not speaking equates to low cognitive ability. And that's just not the case. And so by changing the language to non-speaking, we're disrupting that pattern in your brain, in our brains, that says, wait a minute, that maybe isn't a correlation. That someone's language ability does not correlate to their cognitive ability. And actually, by saying non-speaking, we're acknowledging that they communicate just in a different way. And I think that's a really important piece to start thinking about how different groups of people identify and what language we're using. I also think a lot about neurodiversity movement and words like neurodivergence, right? I identify as neurodivergent, you said that as well. And this is a chosen word by the community. That's an umbrella term. It's inclusive, and it's not part of the medical model. It's not a diagnosis. It's saying this is how we feel and how we feel proud about who we are and how our brains work, and acknowledging that our brain might work differently than yours. And sometimes we're hearing now the word neurotypical, which is actually a misnomer. There is no such thing as a typical brain. And there's actually a call within the community for everyone to sort of step into whatever your quirks are and show those out loud and wear them on your sleeve and bring a rock to fidget with when you're speaking on a panel, and normalize that we actually really all are part of the neurodiversity world, right? We are living in a neurodiverse world. 20 to 25% of us have a disability. And so the more that we are naming that and making space for it and using affirming language, the more that speaking becomes the thinking for other people who maybe are not in these conversations or part of this community.
I want to call out two things I've heard from our panelists so far. First of all, Cade, I hear deeply your thoughts on changing the medical model to the socially inclusive model, and I wanted to take a second to maybe delineate that for folks. So the medical model is the traditional model. It's the disability as a medical disease, fundamentally, and this is the important part, to be cured, versus disability as a sliding scale sort of concept that, I don't know, maybe everyone has different levels of ability in all sorts of different ways, right? And this is just a thing, right? A piece of societal, socially constructed, our society searches for ways to classify folks. And maybe this is just a way that we've classified folks, right? And that classification changes, and that's why language changes. And that leads me to my second point. Juliet, I was chatting with someone in communications in my office the other day, and we were talking about the living nature of the document. We encourage you never to print this document out, and I will say that is because it will change. Right? We committed when we launched it to changing it on a quarterly basis based on feedback, and I will be very transparent. We don't have a full process ironed out for that yet, but that is something that we are doing, and when we do it, we are looking to the community for it. But that is a big thing, right? Things evolve, changes, perceptions change, right? And so if you do print this document out, or any other document, I would encourage you to put a time date stamp on it, because that will only remain true for that period of time. Those 5 minutes, those 10 minutes, that's that day that you printed it out. All right, let's move to the next question. What are some ways, what are some strategies that have worked for both of you folks to allow your communities to address ableist language?
Okay. So in the context of this question, I'm going to think about my community in my workplace, my colleagues, because that's usually who I'm working with on this language. I would say that a number of things have been helpful. One, providing resources that they can refer back to rather than having to ask somebody or have go off on their own and then get corrected, having something that they know that they can always go back to and look for the up-to-date information, because a lot of people are sort of going off instinct And they might not have the relationships, for instance, with the Department of Special Education, where we can say, hey, what terminology is really the best here? Because we do have that conversation around letters that go out and say, actually, we phrased it this way, but is this what we should be saying? I think also correcting in the moment, specifically in person or on a call. Every time I see something in writing that I know is not aligned, I will fix that, but that doesn't always stick as I'm correcting it for a very specific reason, and this is our practice. If we are in conversation and someone says a term or a phrase, immediately not letting it go and not attacking that person, but going, oh, it's actually such and such, that helps reinforce that for that person and for the entire group that we're speaking with as best practices. I think also, honestly, being more upfront about my own differences has really been helpful in terms of allowing people to change their concept of what certain things look like or what normal looks like. They see me every day, they see me in a very specific role, and they may not necessarily anticipate, they have an idea in their head of, well, this is what someone on the spectrum looks like. This is what someone with ADD looks like. This is what someone with autism looks like. I am here to tell them that their experience actually can be adjusted. So being more upfront about my own differences and about my own challenges and about things where I say, for instance, you said don't print out a document. I will always print out a document because I need a physical, visual reminder. I'll go back and I'll double check it, but I will always print. And I have many, many systems of archiving files and folders because I always need to know where everything is. And speaking about that and about not letting people ascribe that to confidence or superorganization, but these are my systems that I use to help me deal with the differences that I have is, I think, helpful and allows other people the space to be more upfront and to also recognize that in their own communities.
I want to say everything you just said in a totally different way. I also talk a lot about my own support needs, right? I eat on a schedule, like I have very specific ways to sort of get through the day, and that are not related to my competence as a professional. And I think a lot of the communities that I'm in, I'm often working with schools and educational organizations. I teach classes at NYU, and explicitly teaching what call-in culture looks like is like, I think, something that's missing from the conversation often. We expect that people will know how to comfortably address someone who has just said something that they might feel offended by, or knows that a community could feel offended. Dr. Better, Black Female Sweater, has great work about this, and how to, like, within an organization, practice and create policies for how to call each other in when you hear something that feels uncomfortable or you think is offensive. There are also great language lists out there. If you're looking for sort of a beginner one, Nate Shalev, who is a white autistic HR professional, has a great inclusive language sort of like intro guide. And if you're looking for a more advanced one, Lydia X.C. Brown, who's a multiracial autistic non-binary person, has a very extensive list that you can look at that is evolving, that sort of talks through how these words have developed, who in power decided that was the word that was going to be used, how do we change that, and what is the word that, or a phrase that is more preferred by the community. And just to go back to Josh, what you were saying earlier, interdependence is so underrated in this community. We're often talking about independence and how much can you do on your own, but what's really important is to recognize that even right here now, we are all learning from each other. We live interdependently. And yes, there are absolutely some things that we should work towards being able to do on our own some of the time, all of the time, but most of what we do is in community with each other. And so I think this is principle 8 of the disability justice movement, and just knowing knowing how to say what you need, how to self-advocate, and who you can go to, and to build that as part of your call-in culture, it can be really powerful in terms of a strategy to address ableist language and create the culture that we want.
Thank you, Cade. And those are great resources. I encourage people to look at them, but we also have a resource, folks. And for those of us in the space, I would encourage you to look at how our glossary compares with the resources that Kate mentioned, because there are also different perspectives on language. And I will be the first to tell you that we've done the best we can to put together our glossary, but because of the ever-changing and unique nature of language as an amorphous concept, right, it's important to look at as many different versions of a glossary or something similar, as you can. And if you see things that don't match up and you feel that they should, submit a form. Submit a form and tell us that we should think about it in our next quarterly glossary review, because it is built to be a living document in that way, not only to encompass the experiences of our community, but those of other communities that might be useful in understanding our experience as New York City Public Schools. So thank you so much for that. Next, I think one of Chancellor Banks' key pillars is empowering families to be our true partners throughout all of the work that we do. And so I'm going to ask you all, how can we empower families and communities to be our true partners in this language work?
I think that first of all is actually providing the opportunity to have that conversation and to keep that line of communication open. One of the things that I know my office specifically often struggles with is that we don't necessarily have a direct line or an easy way to pull in perspectives, or if we are going to people, it's to a group of known parent leaders that we've worked with all the time, right? And I would really like to hear from a wider group of people and have people feel free to send in that feedback, because I feel that we are always missing things, that we send things out into the universe and we may not hear about it until it's a problem, until we've really hurt somebody with a mistake. And I would really like to find a way that we can maintain that open line of communication. I think having the guide of Say This up and having an open feedback area for that is really helpful. I think that it can be helpful for us to push out some of our resources to the community and say, this is how we have been speaking about this. So if you hear other people, in, say, New York City Public Schools referring to things differently, you should know this is not how we speak about this, and there's a reason for that. I think there's a challenge in that this is a living document, so we can't approach this the way that we approach some of our other resources to ensure their high access, which is to translate them into all of our supported languages, to make sure that we print copies, that they're hard copies that you can find in different places, because we know that not everybody is going to be reaching that on a computer. But I think there are ways that we should look into facilitating that, because I think that that's a good approach.
Hard copies and printed resources are important. And when I said don't print this document out, I simply meant don't print it out, shove it in a desk drawer, pull it out 5 years from now and say, oh, look! Right? And that's why, the glossary that you find on the website today has a timestamp in the bottom right-hand corner. And that timestamp to me is critical, because it allows me to go to, and I'm sorry to pick on you in this way, Juliet, but it allows me to go to Juliet in 3 years and go, well, and if Juliet says, well, you've written this way, and this actually says this, and then I can say, well, that was from 5 years ago, right? So it is a challenge with printed resources, but I think the other side of that is that it's not as though we are implementing these changes without a cadence, right? We are implementing them quarterly, and so I think there is a world where we are able to systematically do things like translation and that sort of thing. But Kate, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Lucinda, I was thinking about what you were saying about the importance of community partnerships, and I think part of empowering families and communities is connecting people who are serving disabled and neurodivergent kids with disabled and neurodivergent adult communities. And I think that that's a way to empower people to learn from each other, for kids to see themselves, versions of themselves for when they're older, and to be able to bring in the representation from the adult community that can help influence and support people who are supporting kids.
All right, so I think we can then go to our final question, which is, where do you all think that New York City Public Schools, and most importantly our agency and nonprofit partners, should go next in growing this work?
I mean, I have gone first multiple times. I want to defer to Kate in this, at least in this last one.
You know, I think there's a lot of really great disabled and neurodivergent content creators on social media right now that we can learn from. I'm going to name just a few. Lauren Melissa Elzy, who goes by Atianel, is a mixed race autistic woman who's also an educator within the NEST program, and creates really incredible content around what it's like to have her version of autism and what it looks like in the world and what the supports that she needs and uses are. JT Knox is a kid whose mom makes an account for him. He's a black kid, autistic kid. And Tiffany Hammond, who's a black author, and she just wrote the book A Day with No Words, and is advocating for what it looks like for kids who use AAC, augmentative and alternative communication devices. And there are scholars in this field who write frequently about this, right? There's Dr. Devin Price, who writes about unmasking, and specifically within autism, but within all of neurodivergence, what does it look like to try to fit in and not look disabled in public, and how that's a mask we need to shed. We need to make it okay to be yourself out in the world. And Dr. Nick Walker also talks about this and about how we need to neuroqueer ourselves, right? And so what she means by that is just take off the mask. And if you want to dance as you walk down the street and that's what feels good, just do that. And don't worry about people looking at you or making faces. And just try to make space for the way that everyone shows up.
I think that, I personally find Kate's recommendations very helpful, and little things that I have not necessarily encountered before. And that does sort of lead to my answer to that question, which is that for me, my answer is that, one, as a communications department, we are often leading that step in language, whether we are deciding what kind of terminology or how grammatically New York City Public Schools is always going to capitalize certain things or not going to capitalize certain other things. Because of that, we have a very interconnected relationship with all of the departments of New York City Public Schools, and are always in dialogue with our colleagues about their work and how they're referring to it. And I defer to those departments as the experts in their area and the experts in their audience and in the work. And I am counting on their feedback and their conversations to help guide my work, and then I act as the person who messages that out and can be the bigger bullhorn within the agency, because there is a certain dynamic in that the communications department people will come to me to ask questions about how do we talk about this, rather than going to the department doing the work. And so I can help serve as that intermediary and that partner. And I would definitely encourage you to keep having those conversations both with partners in special ed, but also to reach out to us if we are making errors or we are putting out things that do not seem like they're as helpful as they could be. In our good intentions, we are bumbling about. I would prefer to know that so that we can do right by the community, because my job is not to serve my interests. My job is to do the best job that I can in terms of serving New York City students and families. And if I'm not doing a good job at that, then I want to hear that from New York City students and families.
I agree with all of that. I think, if there's one thing that I've heard today, it's that our door is open, right? And you'll hear this, I think, from some of the other panels as well. And I understand that there has been in the past some challenges with getting this feedback directly to folks at central offices, directly to folks like Juliet, who can be that bullhorn, or the reverse bullhorn, who goes to the office and says, look, I got this inquiry, about this terminology. But we are working to build systems. And I think the Inclusive and Interdependent Language Initiative glossary is, our core example at the moment of a system that is truly two-way, right? But to all of you who are watching online, to all of you in this space, I would encourage you to think about ways to make your work, truly a two-way, three-way, five-way communication system. Gather as many perspectives as you can. Allow those perspectives to sometimes be in contention, because contention will eventually breed consensus, and the consensus will be all that much stronger for it, right? That is what language teaches us, right? So it is important, in fact, it is critical for us to take these steps to be vulnerable, to acknowledge the way that we talk about things, and to acknowledge that sometimes we don't do things in the way that we best could have done them, right? And take that and step forward and move forward and build a better tomorrow for our students and our families.
You have a couple of minutes if there's anything you want to add, but we can also wrap as soon as you're ready.
Can I have one thing?
Sure.
I'm thinking about something I often talk about with friends is the fact that, like, in and of ourselves, we're not disabled. We're disabled by society. And by changing the language that we use in society, we're moving one step towards feeling less disabled. And I think that's just like an important reminder to, as you're listening or as you're speaking, to think about the language you're using and if it is othering others.
Yep.
And how to correct that.
Yep. Fundamentally, disability is a social construct, right? It is not, it is a social construct just as much as everything else that is different about humanity as a social construct, right? But in order for us to understand the world, humanity has built all these different categories, found all these different ways to describe people, right? Even in our descriptions at the beginning of this panel. And I think what Kate is encouraging us to do, and what I encourage you to do, and I think all of my colleagues encourage you to do, is when we acknowledge that we created these systems, and I don't mean us in the room or us online, but I mean us as humanity. When we acknowledge that humanity created these systems, we realize that humanity has the power to change these systems that they've created, right? Nobody passed these systems to us and said, this is a book of rules that you must abide by. And I think this glossary is a shining example of the first step towards changing the system. But to echo Cade, right, realize that you have the power to change the system that we created, right? Go forth and do things. Be the change that you want to see in the room, because I guarantee the world will be better for it.
Amen with that.
Juliet, do you have anything to add before we wrap? I realize I sort of dropped the mic there.
You had a fantastic closing. I don't like to step on it. I think that one of the things that I'm glad that you mentioned this about disability being a concept that we've constructed and the categories and the way that we systemize things. We've talked about this a little bit amongst ourselves, but that I always struggle with the tension between the fact that we want to create, it's not special education, it's education, right? But we're saying the division of special education, and these are special education services. We don't want to say, I find it uncomfortable to continually use a term of saying students with disabilities, that is better than some of the other alternatives, but it still essentially implies that there is a problem with them. And how you get away from that while also having to abide by certain terminologies that are necessary for legal precedents and for services, and how you resolve that tension, and how you get to that space where you're talking about it's not just special education, it's education, it's not disability, this is all part of like what humanity is, and still somehow distinguish that we need to provide these appropriate services to people who need them, and that for me is a real tension and friction.
distinguish services and also distinguish identities,
Right.
right? To Cade's point, celebrating the unmasking,
Right.
right? I think that, I will be the first to say, and I know this is a live panel, but I will be the first to say that this is not an easy question. And so I think we will all walk away from this with different perspectives of chewing on it. And it's okay if you don't agree with everything that is said here, everyone in this room and everyone online, because fundamentally, right, everyone has a different understanding of everything. And if we can build towards interdependence, that is the key, right? We're not telling you come away with the understanding that this term is the right term. Sure, this is the term that we use, but it's a term, right? And together as a community, I think we can build a system that is truly interdependent, where we're all able to build consensus. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all so much for being part of this panel. Staff for the Special Education Office of New York City Public Schools. So thank you all for having me. I am a white woman in my mid-30s with light brown hair and a tan shirt and jacket. So thank you. I just had to put that in there. Welcome to our transportation panel. I want to, if we can just go in order, and so we will do some brief introductions. If you can tell us your name, your affiliation, and maybe a little bit about the work that you do. We'll start with you.
Good morning. My name is David Abrahams. I'm from the District 75. All right. I'll speak louder. Good morning. My name is David Abrahams. I'm from the District 75 Office of Travel Training, New York City Department of Education. This is a program that's been in place for over 50 years. I have over 35 years experience in this program, and it's very great to be here this morning.
Hi, good morning. Lanika Parker-Moore. Okay. Lanika Parker-Moore. I'm from the Office of Pupil Transportation with New York City Public Schools, supporting with helping managing summer school transitions, opening school, and any kind of high-profile cases that happen to come to Chancellor Banks or our executive director at OPT.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laquana Chambers. I am Lanika's colleague. I am the Executive Director of Communications and Engagement with the Office of Pupil Transportation. I'm happy to be here today. Oh, I need to talk louder. Sorry. Gotcha. Okay. I'm not sure if everyone heard me, but my name is Laquana Chambers. I am the Executive Director of Communications and Engagement with the Office of Pupil Transportation. Just want to say good morning to everyone. I'm enjoying the panelists so far. Josh, I just want to say to you, I am so on board with this glossary, because when I just was listening to what you said and I thought about it, it brought to me like giving people grace, because things change so rapidly. What was once said last week is not said this week, and so we just have to remember that we're in education and we're continuing to learn every single day. So just thank you for having us, and I look forward to the conversation.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shauner Shion Horn. I'm a Forbes contributor and I wear many hats. Normally transportation is not my day job, but it is my passion, because basically what I would love to see is that everybody have same day options for travel, which the 174,000 people on Accessor do not currently have, unless they're on this tiny program I'm on, which is totally a trailblazer, and I want to thank the city for what they've done so far. But this is a yes and, so looking forward to having that conversation. And I just wanted to make one last comment referring back to the previous panel, which we will not be able to get to on this panel because it's about transportation. But I wanted to say that I'm proud to identify as disabled, and so the previous comment, which I think may have been misunderstood by some, because I saw some shaking of heads, is, referring to students with disabilities as students with disabilities, there's nothing wrong with that in my view. And also, Josh's point, yeah, I'm proud to be disabled. And to Josh's point, yes, disability is a social construct, but a lot of what we'll be discussing today is the ways in which it's not a social construct. There are physical barriers, there are things that we need to address, and again, if we are fully embracing all of who we are, then we have to embrace that, yeah, whatever challenges there are, we celebrate those too. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Quamel Arroyo. I go by Q, and I am a Latino man, curly hair, blue rimmed glasses, wearing a blazer, and a checkered blue shirt. I have the pleasure to serve as the MTA's very first ever Chief Accessibility Officer, overseeing accessibility throughout all of our different organizations, Metro North, Long Island Railroads, and New York City Transit, including paratransit, which is the largest paratransit operation in the world. I am honored to be here sharing space with all of you as a former public school student who did not go through public school as a person with a disability. I know firsthand so much of all the design barriers that we have built that need to be taken down. I work very closely with SEA and others, and I'm really happy to have this conversation with you all about, as Josh said earlier, the well-intended people who created the barriers that we're talking about today. I am a urban planner and a designer by trade, and I'd love to say that I have a beef with Da Vinci and his ideology of the Vitruvian men, because there is no such thing as a universal prototype for a human form. I myself am a non-compliant body. I acquired a disability, and I no longer have the luxury of going up and down different classrooms when I'm in a school systems, up and down some subway stations to navigate the city independently. So I am so happy that Josh brought that conversation forward and excited to be here.
Oh, okay, I gotta move real quick. Hang on.
Okay.
Sorry, Jess, one more. Transitioning.
All right, well,
Coziness.
that's okay.
All about love.
We're ahead of schedule.
Yeah, we've got elbow room. It's nice.
You're okay. Take your time.
Thank you all for being here.
Okay, well, thank you all for those introductions. I want to start with a question specifically for OPT, but I think it applies to everyone, so feel free to chime in, but I just want to give you guys a chance to respond first. Can you tell us a little bit about how you are supporting families with accessing transportation?
Sure. So the Office of Pupil Transportation is committed to providing quality transportation to every student who is routed for yellow school busing. We support over 164,000 families on a daily basis of getting their students to and from school. And this begins with the planning to ensure that all students receive individualized transportation needs, that their transportation needs are met. And this is working with our partners at schools to make sure that we know what type of transportation students need, to make sure that our office is able to provide that transportation. This plan begins to ensure that we've developed communication pathways with our families on our website, as well as our internal info hub, to empower schools to answer questions about eligibility for their students on a daily basis. Transportation is also offered for the regular school year, but we also provide transportation throughout the summer for different summer initiatives for students who also need that type of enrichment. And this allows us to just service more students and create elevated transportation options. being in the office of OPT and working with our colleagues, I started a few months ago, and I'm able to see on a daily basis the hard work that goes into routing that amount of students to transport them around the school year to year. I thought routing just happened in the summer, right? You have a student needs to get to school, so hey, you route them in the summer, and this is what happens. Routing happens on a daily basis. Changes come up all the time. The office is always working to see how we can shorten a child's route, how we can maybe have less children on a bus. So it's continuous work that happens every day, and the office works really hard to try to make sure that that could happen.
Yeah.
David, do you want to add a little bit about how you help families access your program?
Sure. So, as OPT said, I mean, our job is as well to help students get to school. What happens after students graduate, there's no more school bus, right? And they need to move in from their recreational and occupational activities. So our program, we train students one-to-one to and from their school sites or schoolwork sites to teach them how to travel on public transportation. We meet students and parents, caregivers by doing conferences, outreach. We do these conferences during the daytime and school time. We do them after school, and we sometimes do them on the weekends to promote the program so that we can get people and get parents on board to the major world that now their children are going to experience, and they're not having this school bus, this limousine that will take them to and from school. They got to get there on their own like we do, like we all got here today. And it's a really rewarding job. I can't tell you the amount of letters and how important this is to students, everyone, even if you don't have a disability, to learn how to get places on your own. We've all been there where we grow to that age and we say, I want to get there by myself. I don't need you, Mom. I don't need you, Dad, to take me. I want to go by myself. I want to go with my friends. So that's what we do. We outreach, we have these conferences, and we do workshops to get parents ready. There's a lot of worries that they have. They have to know about the dignity of risk. We're all entitled to dignity of risk. There's risk coming here today, and we have to teach our parents that their children deserve that opportunity, and that it's not about keeping them safe. It's about teaching them to be safe. We all keep our kids safe, but they got to learn how to do it for themselves. So with our process, that is what we do. We've identified 9 essential skills that we all use every day, and we start teaching it to students while they're in elementary schools, so that by the time they get to secondary schools and they've entered their transition locations, they have this opportunity to learn how to travel on public transportation. It's very daunting, but it's very rewarding. We collaborated with MTA, OPT, and I'll stop there, but it's a great job, and I tell you, it is so amazing to see a change in a person that has learned to travel. Their personalities change, their self-esteem goes through the roof. They just become different people. We hear it all the time. And our program is short-term. We ask parents all the time in workshops, how long do you think it takes to travel train a student with a disability? How to travel? A person has never done it, no experience. And they always give us time frames like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. We get it done in 2 to 3 weeks. But it's because it's comprehensive. And last year, I think we travel trained. You know, we were down for COVID, you know, because of, you know, we had to support the schools. But once we got reinstated, we were right back at it. My staff is so dedicated. There was a thought that with everything that was happening in the city, that people didn't want to travel. This population doesn't have a choice, you know. So I knew once we got the okay, we were right back at it. We had 600 referrals, and we travel trained about 150 students. We're on mark. We're hiring, and we're, you know, going to double, triple these numbers as we move forward. So it's a pleasure to meet everyone here today.
Kamal, can you talk a little bit about how the MTA is engaging families and getting resources out there?
Absolutely. But I have to go back to something that David said, because now this is going to be controversial, so hold your excitement. But as a person with a disability who lived in rehab for 10 months and I was 18 when I became disabled, and I saw it happening in my own household. The biggest debilitating factor in a person with a disability's life is their families. Now, mom and dad's in the room, pause. What I mean by that is your child needs to learn to fall. They need to fall out of that chair. They need to be able to pick themselves up, because you ain't always going to be there. You know, and the reality is that once they graduate school, hell, even during school, they're going to want to go to the movies without you. You know, and David, you hit the nail on the head. We have got to let go of our kids and let them be independent people. Because one day they're going to want to go to work, and you're going to have to go to work too. You can't be there with them. So the MTA is picking up where OPT is dropping off, and we're doing that by creating a more equitable system that provides the needs for New Yorkers with disabilities. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I am on a mission to work myself out of a job. I want to have an MTA that provides for everybody's needs and delivers the tools that our customers need to be successful. I am long from retiring, and that's unfortunate. However, we're doing the work. We have a $30 billion investment to redesign our transit system and provide our customers the tools that they need to be successful. I am telling aging New Yorkers to forget about the Carolinas and Florida. Hell, it snows in South Carolina, and you're going to need a kayak in Florida soon to be able to navigate to Wegmans. So I want you to age in place here in New York, in the communities that you help build. And it starts with allowing for our children to move around with grace and independence. And we were the first transit system in the country to have the first accessible bus systems, even before the ADA was signed. You know, we had advocates who fought and chained themselves to buses, and we delivered. We delivered the first fully accessible bus system that moves 24/7 in every area of the city. There are no transit deserts in New York City. There are subway deserts, yes, but there are no transit deserts here in New York, because our paratransit system moves from point to point 24/7. David, you said it earlier. During the pandemic, when we saw subway ridership dropping to a lower proportion than they did during the Great Depression, one area of our operation never dropped, and that was paratransit. New Yorkers with disabilities who don't have any other choice but an accessible transportation system. Our bus systems were saturated and never sank in the way that subway did, because we have a fully accessible bus systems that allows for people with low vision, that allows for people with mobility disabilities, that allow for people with cognitive disabilities to travel independently 24/7. So the MTA is investing to enhance those operations and deliver our customers the service that they want to see happening.
Sean, did you want to add anything about your work?
Well, I'm the only one here that's not working for an agency. I'm a one-woman show, folks. But I think one of the reasons why I'm so honored to be here, and I thank the mayor's office for asking me to be here, is that, you know, to Q's point, Accessoride is, I want to thank, you know, New York City, the fact that Accessoride exists, that it's 24 hours a day, because it's a city that never sleeps, and New York minutes count. What I would love to see, and the reason that I am working so diligently to make sure that we have same-day options, right now Accessoride, as big as it is, 174,000 riders, most of those people, you know, when it's the traditional Accessoride, I just got to be real here, and Q knows, Q's aware. We're all, you know, we're all on the same team here. We all want the same thing, which is to make sure that everybody's New York minutes count the same as everybody else's, and so I want to thank New York City for creating the same-day e-hail pilot program. I was one of 1,200 people on this program. I still am. They're expanding it, but they've cut it down because of budgetary concerns. I would love to see, and this is what I'm fighting for, I have a petition that has over 8,000 signatures in support of more same-day options for disabled New Yorkers in the city, because unfortunately, as wonderful as that is, that it was a trailblazer, I think we're still stuck in a lot of ways as a whole city in this ADA mindset of, you know, because in 1990, you know, booking one day in advance was the best that you could do. that is why it's in the ADA. So we, obviously New York being the best city in the world, has to go higher and better. And I'm so grateful for people like you, because it's really the privilege that you have that you can make that change. And I also believe that it's important that every citizen, you don't have to be working for an agency, this is what I learned, to make a difference. And so my kind of question to everyone here is we all have privilege. If we're in this room, we have privilege. So how can we use our privilege to make space for those who are stuck at home, for those who haven't had the ability to be able to talk to agencies and work through that? And what can we do together? If there isn't the money, how do we find the money? Because there's always money when it's a priority. Right? So we need to look at things like the toilet paper budget, or what are we spending money on that could be going toward these things that can change people's lives today. Thank you.
In the spirit of doing things together, I want to shift back to OPT for this next question. If you can talk a little bit about the ways you currently collaborate with other agencies and departments. And is there a pathway for improvement you want to call out? How we can better collaborate, and if we can, what is needed to make that happen?
Okay, so I'll take the first part of that question. So our office, we work with many advocates across the city, specifically advocates for children. We work with SEO, who's in the room, Special Education Office, our IGA office, Intergovernment Affairs, Office of Student Health, all different types of agencies that we work with to make sure that we're expanding transportation options for students with disabilities. And more recently, in addition to just our students with disabilities, are newcomers. So we've been working with DHS with that. As we hear, there's thousands coming in by the week. We're routing hundreds per day to make sure that we're aligning not only what's federally mandated, we're going above that to make sure that all of our students have those options. And so working very closely with those agencies have allowed us to do that.
And I can take the second part of improving equity and just independence and just improving OPT in general. I think when you work in an office that's our size, right, there has to be continuous improvement that happens, and that happens from getting feedback from the communities, feedback from the schools, feedback from the people that you service, to make sure their needs are being met, and also moving towards better technology. So at OPT, we have been working with contracted vendors to improve our routing system. We had a professional development, and I learned that years ago, OPT used to use literally strings and thumbtacks to create routes across the city. Could you imagine, right? And this is how people legit would remember to route kids across the city. And so now, of course, we're moving towards better technology. We've been working with an organization called VIA, who we piloted parents now being able to sign on to our New York City bus app and see that their child is going to be picked up and dropped off, right? So we want to use that type of GPS tracking so parents can follow their children and see that they have gotten picked up and dropped off. We also are going to be using VIA to update our routing, right? So we can have better up-to-date information as far as traffic and how things work, so that the people who have to continue to route every single day have better technology to do that, so they're able to do that faster and able to provide that improvement for our students and families.
Now you want to talk a little bit about inter-office collaboration or inter-agency collaboration?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the very first time that the MTA has a team that's charged with looking at accessibility from HQ, right, from the very highest level at the organization. So my team and I are charged with looking at crafting that conversation and connecting those dots from paratransit and what's happening there to our buses operation to subways and the railroad. And what I want to see is actually not have New Yorkers with disabilities travel in a taxi for every trip, because that's not where the fun is. I was born without a disability, and I ride the subway almost every day, Still, I ride the subway almost every day as a person who is paralyzed and lives in a wheelchair. The New York City transit system, the subway system in particular, no offense to buses, is not only the most effective way to get around the city, but that's where the entertainment is at. Gratuities is at. So what I want to deliver is I want people of all abilities, younger Q without a disability, riding the train with older Q with a disability now, and moving in the most efficient and fastest and most entertaining way to move around the city. And that is our subway. That's why we're putting up $30 billion to redesign the subway system. Now, I know that that's not going to work for everybody, right? So for those who don't have that option, we are enhancing our buses and our railroad systems as well. However, you talk about collaboration and education. Well, I had the pleasure of serving as the city's very first chief accessibility specialist at the New York City Department of Transportation, where we settled the lawsuit and invested over $7.5 billion to ensure that every curb cut in New York was made accessible, right? For OPT to go out and do travel training, we need to make sure that those curbs are available for someone who needs them, and we need to make sure that we understand the difference between the needs of someone who's visually impaired and mobility impaired, because that curb cut is nothing but a nuisance to a blind person. They don't need that. It actually takes away accessibility for a blind person because it doesn't get them that height differentiated, that cue that there's a change in what's in front of you. So I have to make a clear distinction here. In the conversation of travel training, we cannot forget orientation and mobility training for someone who's low vision and blind. And we cannot forget that this is not a zero-sum game, right? One form of access does not have to take away from another. There's enough in the pot for everybody to go around. But my work is to ensure that every New Yorker has access to the transportation that they choose, giving them that voice and independence to move around independently, right? And that happens throughout the system. That happens with collaborating with our partners at the Department of Transportation. And I want to thank the City of New York for, continuing to be our partner in enhancing bus stops. That fully accessible bus system is moot if they cannot get access to a bus stop on a sidewalk that's clear of snow in the winter, that has a curb ramp for people to get up and down. We still have bus stops in Staten Island that there's green patch. It's literally mud at some times of the year. We have bus stops in Brooklyn where the bus stop's at a median that's 2 feet wide. That doesn't allow a bus driver to deploy a ramp to give someone the access that they need to get on and off. That doesn't provide that bus driver the access to deploy a ramp for a parent or a caregiver with a child in a stroller. And I am proud to say that my team and I just rolled out this year the very first open stroller pilot in New York City. My definition of accessibility extends out to parents and caregivers who use strollers, right? Because we have over 130,000 births a year in the city of New York. So even though this is not a conversation about disability, it's about accessibility. And I am not the chief disability officer for the NCA. I am the chief accessibility officer. That means that I have to take into account the needs of our aging population, our parents and caregivers, and our tourists. And I do that very intentionally because we're at the DOT, I was talking primarily for people with disabilities and others. My pie is a lot bigger than just the 1 million New Yorkers with disabilities that we have here. It includes the 60 million tourists. This year we're expecting 65 million tourists to come to New York City. Well, guess what? None of them can get through a turnstile with their luggage, with their bags from JFK. That is an accessibility need. So my team and I are working to redefine our infrastructure, to rebuild what access means in our subway system. And I want to give a quick shout out to someone who's in the room, and it's my friend and teacher, John Padula, who's an Educational Vision Service Supervisor over at District 75. And I'm going to have to steal one of his quotes, which is so good. And it's that, don't mistake disability for inability. Low expectations lead to low outcomes. I am a member of the disability community. I'm a member of the disability community, and I have an amazing team at the FTA, and I'm going to shout out Sarah Barry, who's here from my team. We have over 60,000 employees at the MTA who are moving New Yorkers 24/7. And it is our job to educate them so that each and every one of them has the tools that they need for success because I need my employees to feel comfortable having a conversation with someone who's blind. I need my employees to feel comfortable saying the wrong thing because guess what? We're not going to get it right the first time. We probably won't get it right the second time, and I'm okay with that, right? Because the only way that we fail is by not engaging in the conversation. And that is not what's happening, not at the DOT, not at the MTA, and not at the city of New York and the state of New York. We are having these conversations with the advocates. And I want to thank Sean for bringing that tension to the table, because that's the only way that I know that I'm doing something right.
Was there tension?
You know?
Okay.
That's how I know that I'm doing something right. You know? If
Interesting.
there is no tension, then your table's not complete. Your table's not full. And it's Sean's job to push me to get there faster, to get to my mark at the speed that's acceptable, not desirable, but acceptable for advocates and dare I say activists, right?
Or both, yes.
You know, because we have a lot of advocates that become activists, and it's my job to listen to both and to work with both. But we are working on the same mission.
Yeah.
And for the first time ever, you have a governor, a mayor, and a leadership team at the MTA that say, you know what? We're not going to placate you and telling you that we're working on it. We're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to show you where we are all along the way. That's why congestion pricing is so important for us right now. You know, for our buses to move faster, for our buses to get our kids to school, well, guess what? We need some space, and the only way that we can guarantee that is by reducing the number of vehicles coming into New York City. And we're going to do that with congestion pricing, which guess what? It's going to fund that accessibility that everybody wants me to get to work on here in New York. Everybody tells me, Q, how dare you tell me that you're doing everything that you can when you have a $30 billion settlement to do this? Why is it going to take 30 years? Well, here's why. I work on two things and two things only. And that is the two things that New Yorkers hate. New Yorkers hate the status quo, and they hate change. And therein lies my problem. Everybody who tells me, do it faster, how do you sleep at night, but don't touch my station. Not at my expense. You know, nobody wants to foot that bill. The MTA is putting that bill, the governor and the mayor are putting that bill, and everybody else who wants me to do it faster says, but don't interrupt my commute. Not at my expense. Well, guess what? Everybody has to give something up here. For us to redesign a system, the first elevator at the MTA went in the year that I was born, 1989. You know, 34 years ago did we start looking at accessibility. Just last year did we start investing in a meaningful way in accessibility. So, I'm sorry, New York, but you're going to have to pay a little bit too. You know, I am coming for your station. I am going to interrupt your commute. And that's the only way that I'm going to give New Yorkers that change that they want to see.
I appreciate you ending it there because I think I want to give a little bit more time for everybody to expand upon what is needed. Like, what are the connections we need to make to make this stuff happen going forward?
I'd love to take it from here because I think, you know, it's interesting. The MTA found the one guy in a wheelchair who can do subway, bus, and everything because he's Superman, right? But I'm here to represent because I'm sorry, you went after my cab drivers and they're my favorite people on the planet. So, you know, for me personally, I've told Q this story. He's heard this story many times. For me personally, even, I'm so grateful that we're getting there, that we have an end point, and hopefully it'll be all on time. But, you know, if everything goes well, I will be a senior citizen by the time, right? And that's not on Q. That's not, I mean, look, they didn't build the subway system with us in mind because we were institutionalized at the time or at home and hidden, right? And now it's a totally different thing where people with disabilities, we have technology, we have dreams, we have aspirations and things that we need to get to now. And so for me, you know, it's often said that the taxis are, you know, they're not a transportation, a taxi company, you know, but for me, the taxi is equity. You know, it's not a privilege, it is equity. And so, you know, I totally get, you know, I've heard Q talk about not being that comfortable in a cab. Everybody has their own way. You know, if Subway works for him, it's wonderful. But, you know, I think sometimes we all have to kind of acknowledge our privilege. And I am very privileged in that I can take a cab that is, you know, any cab in New York City, which makes it a lot easier for me, whether it's accessible or not. And I recognize that obviously my contemporaries who have wheelchairs may not have that. I think for me, what I think of, when you talk about allyship, it's not about never making mistakes, but how do you react when things go wrong? Are you defensive? Or do you say, wait, let me have some humility here and let me hear what's being said? Because it is true. I never wanted to be, I'll be honest, he said the word activist. I never wanted to be an advocate or activist because I was a happy kid. And I thought, my disability was a blessing of my life. Talking about parents for a second, I just want to say, my parents, when I wanted to be a ballerina, they just got me ballerina costumes for Halloween. I have cerebral palsy my entire life. They never said, Sean, we need to talk about other career options for you. They just let me be a kid and dream. And I'll tell you what else. When my mom found out that the MTA was cutting the most innovative program they've ever had, in my opinion, this e-hail program, which was only for 1,200 of us, and I know that it needed to be expanded and all that. She said, this program at this point in your life is more important than me as your mother. I will call her and have her tell you guys. My jaw dropped, because what she was saying is it provided me freedom and access that I had never had. I was on the traditional accessoride program since I was a baby, basically. I've been on it for probably almost 30 years. And I was on it before GPS, so you can imagine, right? I was in the trenches, of this. And I think, it's just important to recognize that, we always say this, disability is not a monolith. And, it obviously makes, I think, the MTA and Q's job harder because we're not all one person. But what I would like to see is just making sure that, from a civil rights standpoint, that if not everybody is being required to book their rides 1 to 2 days in advance, I want to make sure that we're not required to do that either. So
Yeah, tough act to follow. Bouncing off what you said, Sean, civil rights, it is the right for people to be able to travel. And I found over the years in the District 75 Office of Travel Training that right is sometimes the last thing people think about in the plan when it comes to creating these jobs, creating opportunities for people. It's like, okay, we got this great job for these students, but how are they going to get there? They start tomorrow, David. Get it, make it happen, Yeah. So for our program, we're used to it, and we wouldn't have survived without collaborating with all of these organizations as well. OPT, at some point, they were using bus escorts, and I guess they ran into some issues. They contacted our office, and we talked about safety issues that we employ and that helped their program. MTA, obviously we worked hand and foot together, They provide us with mobility passes so that our trainers can go out and use the system at no cost to them. And obviously OPT as well gives us the Metro cards for the students, which they need as well. We've also collaborated with New York City Police Department. I don't know if you know, many years ago in the 70s, you had to wait 48 hours before you could report a person missing. It was our program that initiated. We can't wait 48 hours. These students have disabilities. We need to get on it right now. So that was changed. So also, we've worked with the Department of Transportation. They've been very helpful with us when we say we've gone to certain intersections. This light is not working here. This is not a safe intersection. You might have to break ground. We need the curb cuts. We need the islands. We need lights put in here, crosswalks. They've been on top of it, We've moved bus stops, because it's just not accessible. People don't think, when they make a bus stop, yeah, it's great for maybe the average person, but, and we have to sometimes, because we're out in the field, we're the ones out there testing and seeing things. So collaboration is a major key for us. We also are still in collaboration with the MTA. They're going to reinstitute their travel training program as well. There are millions of people that need this program. We're a small program, so we have to collaborate, and we get help from them. We plan to help them. We've also helped train them. We've helped train the police with sensitivity, because as we know, there are people with physical disabilities, that's easy, and you might be okay, you might get those accommodations, but what about the people with invisible disabilities, you know? Our students with cognitive disabilities. You know, I was telling Sarah recently, they need to make sure, and she said they do, that every year that the bus drivers go through sensitivity training, because you can understand with all the teenagers that are out there that they may think that our students are just being wise guys asking these questions about how to get places that seem simple to them. Oh, I just missed my stop, what do I, you know? So we meet great bus drivers. I have collaborated with, when we meet them, the great bus drivers, we report them. And when we meet the ones who are not doing great, we report them, you know, so that we could break those negative things. And we've been involved with those sensitivity trainings and can tell you what the problems are out there. And it's a continuing, ongoing process, you know. AHRC, YAI, we've helped train their trainers, so we're trying to get everyone out there. It's not something we're trying to hold back. We want everyone to have the opportunity to access the real world.
Before I move on to the last question, I just want to make sure you have a chance to share if there's any specific needs you want to call out here today with so many collaborators in the room, or if there's anything you want to capitalize on that we may be able to shed light on today.
Yeah, you know, I'd like to jump in on this one because my definition of accessibility does not have a period. And it does not have a period at the end because accessibility is ever evolving. You know, I am an expert on spinal cord injuries, T9 disabilities, because that's what I live with. You know, everything else I need to lean on Sean, the advocates, my team, to learn about what else is out there. And we don't talk about this enough, but you know, technology is giving us a great tool to close those gaps of inequalities in our environment. The iPhone has been the hottest thing since sliced bread for black and blind and low vision people to be able to be independent, to be able to be pedestrians on their own, to navigate to a building, to navigate to a restaurant, to work, to a bar at the end of the job, independently. And what I'm trying to say by that is, I need everybody in this room to go back to your community and tell them we need to be comfortable not having a period at the end of our definition for accessibility. Because my team and I are ever learning, we're growing, we're using right now new wayfinding tools, and we're partnering with organizations out there that are providing wayfinding tools for low vision and blind people. And that same tool, I'm also using it to help people who don't speak English learn about wayfinding. That same exact tool is translated in whatever language that end user needs. And they don't have to be a blind or low vision person to utilize that application to help them identify a bus stop, a subway station, an access-ride stop. And the message here is there are many solutions that knock out more than one problem. And we need to find those unicorns. We need to really lean into these solutions that are helping more than one problem out there. So I understand that we may have problems that we'd like to find solutions for our students and our children to be independent, but those same needs exist in adults. And those same needs exist in tourists. So when I go to the federal government for a grant, which we got for Navalance, $2 million to test this wayfinding application, I'm not asking it just for my 250,000 low vision New Yorkers that I know that are out there. I'm asking them for every New Yorker who's going to come to the city of New York. And the city of New York speaks over 180 languages. Those people can use Google Translate on their phone, and that application is now accessible to them in their native tongue to learn about wayfinding and move around the system. So it's really important that we not fixate on the definition for accessibility. Before I got to the MTA, accessibility meant an elevator. That was the definition. Now we're doing wayfinding. We're going to reinstitute travel training, and we're going to lean into those needs of our, low vision and blind students and New Yorkers who couldn't care less for travel training, because travel training for them isn't a thing. They need orientation and mobility training so that they can be independent as well. So again, it's not a zero sum, and there's not a period at the end of this definition, because we're growing and we're learning that this definition is going to continue to evolve because the solutions are going to continue to evolve. And it's okay for us to test many things with the comfort of knowing that they're not going to be solutions. They're not all going to be solutions that stick, and that's okay, right? What's not okay is not to engage. What's not okay is not to try. And if anything, I'd love to leave everyone here with the comfort of being uncomfortable, of not knowing, and missing the mark. Because you don't miss the mark unless you don't try.
Actually, I think Q brought up a great point I would love to kind of dovetail off of. I think I always have talked about access. I don't think anybody here is putting a period at accessibility. I think we're all the choir. If you're here, I believe that everybody here wants that. So I think that's a good level set first and foremost. But also, I think, when you think about exactly what you're saying in terms of there's more to accessibility than just stairs and elevators. I've always said that it's spiritual, it's emotional. There's so much that goes into making someone feel welcome. And one of the reasons, and we've talked about this before, the subway, even, I forgot to mention this earlier, even in 30 years when it becomes accessible, I will probably not be able to use it unless, one thing about the buses, there's a blue section that people know, even if they have to grumble and they have to wait for someone to be tied down, everybody knows they have to give their seat up. There is a culture, at least, of knowing what the rules are, even if people are not happy about it. But in the subway currently, the way it is, everybody who's ever been on the subway knows that it's every person for themselves. And I can tell you, my mom bringing mom back again, because obviously we love our moms, and like someone said, it's really, I thank my parents for giving me wings to fly and ways to move through the world. But she told me she stopped taking me to the subway because one day, I have to wear crossbody bags because my hands are occupied, and that's the easiest way for me to carry what I need. So we were trying to make it through the doors, and the crossbody bag slid down my body, but my hands are occupied. I can't pull it up. I can't. So I almost got strangled by my crossbody bag just trying to make it in through the doors. And then when I get there, nobody ever gives me a seat until you stare somebody down. But I'll tell you, above ground people, I don't know what happens to chivalry underground, but suddenly it disappears. So for me, I would still be concerned, even with every elevator that we need in those subways, that my life would still be in danger if I used anything. So that's why, for me, I want us to all think bigger and think about how can we make, again, to Josh's point, if it is the cultural construct, how can we make sure that that is the most equitable it can be, so that, wherever we are, we feel welcome and we don't feel like we're going to get trampled to death when we want to go from A to B. So.
I'm just going to, we only have a couple minutes left, but I want to make time for this question, and please feel free to hop in if you want to respond. But how do you ensure that we are honoring the rightful presence of people with disabilities in our city?
I'll start. For us, it's outreach. As Q said, parents are our biggest opponents. Their children going out in public for the first time. So the only people that they will listen to is other parents. So we try to get groups of them together so they can support each other. And when they get competitive, they say, oh, this child did it? Oh, mine can do it. So that's how you get them in a room together, outreach. Again, we do workshops. We do lessons for the students. We do them in the daytime at school time. We can do them after school. We even have some programs where we work on the weekends where parents can come with their children. We have it's called Journey to Independence, and it's on Saturdays, and it's the most phenomenal thing where you see a parent both, so it's amazing. Normally, at school you have just the students there, but you have the parent in there. It's amazing to see the good and the bad that happens between their relationship when their child is doing something good or maybe something not so well, and it's really a strong proponent to see them now, okay, I believe my child can do this, you know? And with instruction, some of our children takes 3-4 years before they get the opportunity to go outside, you know? It's practicing inside. So parents, I'm going to implore you, take your children on public transportation. Don't drive all the time. Let them lead. Give them opportunities to swipe the Metro card, to find the location, ring the bell. Don't just do everything. Don't grab them by the hand. You know, you'll know as a travel trainer when you see us behind the student, letting them take 15, 20 minutes to make that decision to cross the street. That's what it takes. Letting them fall down, and don't pick them up unless they say, I need help. All right, let them get up on themselves. We teach students what to do when they get lost. That means letting them get on the wrong bus. You may take time out your schedule, but what do? Can you get help from the bus driver? Can you communicate? Even our non-speaking students, right? They can still communicate, get help. So you got to practice this stuff. We're not miracle workers. We need the families. We need the educators to do their jobs so that by the time we get to us, we can kind of close the loop on them and kind of brush up on the things. But it's a short-term program. We're not, we're a small program. We can help everyone, but the parents, students, they got to do their own job. You got to advocate, and that's what we do. Contact me. I'll come out, meet your students, meet the parents, explain the program, the process. It's a long process. It's very complicated. It's not easy, but with hard work, it's worth the effort. Thank you.
Are you getting Saturday program exception cards for your program? Yeah. Okay. Make sure. OPT, we have one of, I think, the largest fleet above the MTA. We are busing over 8,000 routes per day, and this is for students who are ambulatory and non-ambulatory. And so it's an extension of the school. That first step that you get on the bus, that's when school starts, right? From your bus driver saying good morning to going into the school building. And for some, that's the only way that they can get to school. So it's very, very, very important. Our day moves very quickly. There's things happening in real time. I always tell everybody, this is not your Uber Eats delivery. These are children, and we strive to make sure that they're there every single day when they're supposed to be there and on time. Of course, there's always hiccups, and obviously we have to work through those things. And even one student late or one student, traveling outside of guidelines, we take that very seriously. But we try to do our best to make sure that they all have the access that they deserve and that they need. And not even just school bus, because everybody thinks of that when they hear transportation. There's also the Metro cards, 800,000 Metro cards a day. We have safety and travel tips as well for that population. So it's just all about access and making sure students have the right to go to school as they should. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Sure. Oh, well, did you want to say anything before?
No, Monica handled it.
Oh, I know, handled it well. Well, no, I think that's what this whole panel has been about, is like, and to my point about welcoming people, I think rightful presence is making people feel like, no, and I think this has changed from when I was a kid. It used to be, that whoever was different had to be scrappy and adapt for themselves, right? And you had to figure out the way to, morph into your environment wherever possible. And I think now, through social media and people just understanding that we should be celebrating every kind of difference, that now it's more like, no, I'm here, it's your job to welcome me. So I think the fact is that this is what we are working toward, rightful presence of every human being, because every person is valuable. I think for me, it's just, in terms of transportation, I think that's the biggest barrier as to why we don't have the employment rates we'd like to see among adults with disabilities. Because I can tell you for myself that I was really scared to get a 9-to-5 job in an office. There's a reason I work for myself. I can make my own hours, and if your accessoride is 2 hours late or 2 hours early every single day, that is huge barrier to really being able to show up the way you want to at work. And so I think rightful presence is making sure that everybody feels And this is not to say that we should be high maintenance for no reason. It should be reasonable, right? You know, and I think everybody should feel welcome. And it is tougher in a city of 8 million people to make sure that 8 million people feel welcome. But I do think that when we talk about rightful presence, everyone has the right to be here and should be accounted for. And obviously that is a lofty goal and it is ideal, but I look forward to the day that we're all out of a job.
You know, so much of the work that we do, I think, at this table and in this room, it's couched under DEI, and I couldn't care less for DEI. I don't care for DEI because it's demographics engineering. It's what I call it. What I work towards and what I care most about is the B, which very few people, and people know that they belong when they're being engaged, when they're being spoken to, and when they are able to contribute. You know, in the disability community, Americans with disabilities are the second largest overeducated, underemployed demographic in the United States, second only to African American women. And you know, to what Sean said, you know, transportation is a big barrier, and I am working with Commissioner Curry at the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities to do a PSA and remind New Yorkers that the mayor has invested millions of dollars in Workforce One and with the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities to help New Yorkers with disabilities get employed. And we're going to be unveiling a PSA on buses to remind New Yorkers with disabilities that our bus system is fully accessible and it's a great medium to get them to work and to get them to move around the city 24 hours. They can rely on that system and we leave no one behind. And to many of you who are thinking, well, this is a little bit obtuse, where do I start? You know, I'll end with this message that I tell my employees a lot and the people that I work with. I care not for your solution until you fall in love with the problem. And I would dare to say that most of us in this room are overeducated people who have gone through a lot of schooling and have masters like I do and PhDs and all these degrees, and we think we have the answers, when really the answers can only come from the end users, from the people that will be impacted. People with disabilities are the first hackers. They're the original hackers. We are the original hackers because very little is ever designed for us. I started speaking by talking about my beef with Da Vinci, well, that continues to be the truth today. Programs, spaces, so much is designed to that Vitruvian man, when in reality, we should be engaging with those people who are not designed for it, because every day we're hacking our environments to make it work for us. So lean into your community, speak to your students with disabilities, and learn from them what they need to be successful. What tools do they need you to invest in and work for, so that they can feel like they belong.
Thank you, Kamal. We'll close with that. I just want to give them a round of applause. So much. I know we've had a jam-packed day and it's going to continue to be jam-packed for a couple more hours, but we'll try to give you breaks where we can. If you need to get food or drinks, please help yourself. Just try to do so quietly during the panels. It's totally fine. I'm very excited to introduce this next panel, representing New York City Public Schools. We are very lucky today to have a conversation on education, led by Deputy Chancellor Carolyn Quintana. Chief of Special Education, Christina Foti. So I am going to turn it over to them, and I will let you ladies know when you have about 5 minutes left.
Great. Well, thank you, Rachel. Hi, everybody. I'm Carolyn Quintana. I also go by Q, and so every time I heard Sean mention Q, I just kept looking at it with a little bit more attention than usual. So, but you can call me anything you like. Carolyn, Q, whatever makes you happy. But Lucina, I'm so happy to be here in this space. This is wonderful. This is great. Such sunlight and beauty behind us, and there's a little outdoor space. So congratulations to you and to the team. Yep. Yes. Yeah, Lori. Congratulations to them. Yeah. Last time we met, the mayor graciously hosted at Gracie Mansion, and then we agreed that we would facilitate the next one. Thank you for giving us the space to do that. We talked about how varied agencies have to come together in order for us to really build the systems that we want to see that support and engage every person, and especially with our people with disabilities in mind, right? And I love that the last panel, I only got to see the last panel. I'm sorry I missed the prior one. I heard it was really fantastic too. But that they talked so much about, it's not about building something special or different, but how are we really being inclusive of all? And in doing so, we start to just build with that or engineer with that in mind so that it becomes part of our practice. We're not quite there yet. We're not there yet in the spaces of public education either, but with Christina Foti and the team at the helm, I am sure that we're going to make some really, really great strides while we are all here. We talked a little bit about greater accountability, about ways to improve, and this time I feel like we're going a little bit deeper. So we have made some, and I'm going to put this in quotation marks only because it's your language, bold strides. It's part of Christina's big, bold vision toward launching reforms and addressing some of these points. And Christina, can you talk a little bit about the vision, your vision for New York City public schools and the work that we're already doing that you've started for our young people with disabilities?
Of course, and it really is our vision. I mean, I look around this room and see so many of you who have contributed, who have fought, who have advocated, who have strategized, who have been our voices when it is in really difficult conversations to move our agenda forward. And so I thank you to each of you who have helped and support our work. I also just want to say a big thank you to Deputy Chancellor Quintana, not just because she's my boss, because she's a great boss, but also she is remarkable in her ability to continuously center the voices of our students with disabilities, our families with disability, students with disabilities, and also of our multilingual learners. And oftentimes it's about teaching and learning, and then it's about don't forget to include students with disabilities and our multilingual learners into everything we just outlined and done already, and have already finished, but we have to remember to include them at the end. That's really not how Deputy Chancellor Quintana has been organizing and overseeing teaching and learning, which is exactly what we needed in terms of leadership. It is how do we start with, how do we center our students with IEPs and their families and our multilingual learners, and now, excitedly, we are including our newly arrived New Yorkers into that conversation as well. And how do we build from there, right? And when we talk about special education, is it really special education or is it education, right? And true for our multilingual learners, right? So that's been a really exciting shift under DC Quintana's leadership, and one that we are deeply grateful at New York City Public Schools. A few things that I want to highlight. Number one, I think this is a really exciting time in special education for a few reasons. I look at each of you and think, you're the reason why it's exciting. But so I feel that collectively. Each of you are the reason why it's exciting. But the second reason is last December, Chancellor Banks launched a Special Education Advisory Council, which included 54 stakeholders from across the city, from various agencies. So we had state level representation, we had local level representation, we had parents, we had students, we had unions, we had city council members. You name it, we tried to get a representative from every angle of this work. And some of those advisors we're grateful to have sitting here today. That advisory council is about to launch 5 recommendations, has previewed 5 recommendations that they are making and presented to the chancellor last week. Now, I'm going to just quickly tell you what those recommendations are, and when you listen to them, you're going to say, obviously, right? Right. But think about the scale that we're doing this work on, right? 16 to 1,800 schools, almost 1 million children, the largest school system in the country. For years, we have done this in a way that is like, oh, go to that school, it's good for kids with IEPs. Or get that teacher, she knows how to work with kids with IEPs. Or try that one program, it only exists in that one school, but it works, right? We want to be done with those days and say no matter where you go to school, no matter what program, what teacher you have, what class you're in, you have access to the highest quality instruction and people that are going to support the growth and development of you as a student and of your child as a parent.
So those 5 recommendations are: number 1, New York City public schools must be intentionally designed to be fully inclusive and interdependent. We heard a lot about this, right, through the lens of transportation in our last panel. And that is true for our school buildings, both in terms of curriculum and instruction, community, sense of belonging, but also physical accessibility, right? We must take steps to reimagine general education. That's where our friend DC Quintana comes in, because she's going to help us lead that reimagining of general education to be the school system that we really want it to be for all of our students. Number 3, we must strengthen trust between schools and families. We must, and that's where folks like my time, where you come in earlier on the last panel. I think it was Mr. Abrahams who said, parents will only listen to parents, and it is so true. They also listen to my time. Because Ms. Clark's not going to be happy if they don't listen. And so we are grateful for our external partners who help create that bridge of trust between schools and families as well. Number 4, we must prioritize investments in public school programs close to students' homes. Right, Mr. Abrahams, so they can travel independently there, and promote inclusion and result in strong student outcomes. We need to get our kids off of these school buses that is not waking up at 5:30 in the morning. And while we appreciate greatly the job that OPT is doing to try to get them to school, there shouldn't be such a demand, right? And for kids who absolutely need school buses, let's provide them. But ultimately, our kids are going to be grown-ups who travel independently in this world, right, to their jobs. And as Sean said earlier, transportation and access, right, cannot be the barrier that prevents them from getting that job. So let's start when they're younger, and teach them how to travel and navigate safely, even when they get on the wrong bus, and still be able to get to their workplace and to their schools. And then lastly, we must shift mindsets, build an anti-ableist culture, and incorporate the perspectives of those with lived experience. We heard a lot about that in our language panel that we opened up the day with. And that is in itself a monumental task, given how ingrained and steeped into ableist culture our society is built on literal infrastructure, operations, right, mindsets, all of the things, and we're turning that tide, and Josh and team are leading that on the language front, and we're super grateful to him for that work. So I'll pause there, and I don't know if DCQ, if there's anything you want to add to that, but that's to me is why it feels like an exciting time in New York City public schools.
Absolutely, and those are big, bold statements, right? And we want to make sure that we can meet each of those. And I think one of the ways that we've gone about doing that, and it's something that you heard the Chancellor say in the very beginning when he took over this administration, was that he wanted to strengthen those relationships with the community. And one of the things that I love about working with this particular team, I hear Christina and the team say often, for the community, by the community. And so what does it really mean when we are trying to do this work as not only as a collective, but with the community in mind? And so can you talk a little bit more about how we're seeing that partnership and what for the community, by the community means to you? I do want to say too, I loved the visual of the push pins with the strings. Outrageous. But when we build these schools the way that we're thinking about, when we have programs that are in the schools that the kids can access in their local community, not only do we minimize the amount of not only do we allow them to have actually access within their own community, but then we don't have to use buses nearly as much. We don't have to use buses nearly as much. We're saving some money, and when we're saving some money, we can put it back into the schools for the services that kids need. So in the end, doing all of this work really is what matters. And so how do you engage the community in really making sense of that, and two, in helping us move this forward?
We have about 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Oh,
I know, it's fast.
Okay, we're going.
5 minutes for all of it? Oh my goodness!
We've got this
Go.
too. We've got this. We know. Sometimes we only get really 5 seconds. So
Okay.
we're doing great here.
Elevator pitches all the way through.
So, well, let's think about this, how it's really gone for kids and families, right, in New York City, in terms of a for the community, by the community.
the way that this typically happens, right, is through the quote-unquote turning 5 process, which Ellen has told us year after year that we need a new name, and we absolutely do. If you're a general...
kindergarten.
Thank you, Ellen. If you're entering kindergarten without an IEP, you typically go to your home zone school, right? If you're a student with an IEP entering kindergarten, we evaluate you, and we get back to you, and we let you know where you're going, right? Now, that's really not the definition of for the community by the community, right? Because most often, then, we're putting you on a bus, and we're sending you outside of your community, right? And so what we're hoping to do, and definitely is make big shifts. We have we're starting a 5-year plan. And in the first year, what we're really hoping to do is reinvent and that turning 5 process, or that entering kindergarten process, where we look at what has historically happened year over year in districts. And we give superintendents and we empower them to say, you know what, I have X number thousand of students with autism in my districts. And by the way, my parents keep asking me for these programs. Central New York City Public Schools, can you build those programs in my district in time to receive these children? And by the way, can you build them close to home, right? And so what we are trying to do in year 1, and again, this may sound like that's a quite obvious solution, is in year 1, we're looking to start with 5 districts, and we're looking to really pilot this. And to deliver a proof of concept that reimagining the entering kindergarten process is going to work, right? Year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, you heard me say autism, and that is one of our disability classifications. Yes, it's our largest and most fast growing, right? 1 in 36 students, kids across the country have autism, and so we're starting with autism. But it is definitely not lost on us that there are many other disabilities out in New York City and many other needs. And so when we talk about year 2s, year 3, year 4, year 5, one of the conversations, and I look around at the stakeholders in this room, and something that came up in the last summit was, what about our kids that are out of state because we haven't had local placement, right? And when we think about District 75 and what District 75 was intended to be when District 75 first opened, right? It was intended to be an alternative environment for students who truly could not participate in a general education setting, whether it was unsafe, whether it was a medical risk for them, right? Whether their mental health needs were so great that they required support that is beyond what a typical school provides, psychiatric support, right? And yet, District 75 has become this middle ground where we send largely disproportionately Black and brown boys, right? Most of them should be back in their district schools close to home. And then if you have really significant needs, you're going out of state.
Like where we can't actually then be accountable. We don't have ways to monitor and support. I mean, the last time we were here, we had some of those conversations, right? And so what if we brought it back to where we actually could in some way ensure that students are at minimum getting the types of supports that we think are important for them?
That's right. And so people will often say, what about District 75? Is District 75 going away? No, we need District 75. District 75 is not going away. We need our kids close to home, though, too, right? And we need our kids in New York City public schools where we have full range of oversight over them. When we send a child to a non-public school, we are no longer in charge of their educational outcomes. We support the IEP process, we write IEPs, we meet with parents, but we don't supervise that principal. We don't supervise that teacher in that class. And largely when we're out of state now, we actually have the state is actually the person who has the entity that has oversight. Right? And so moving and shifting that continuum back to closer to home, if you could visually represent that, and my team and I do need to come up with a visual graphic for that, but we're looking to get, right, kids and back to their communities and as close to their communities as possible.
I think something too, Christina, that you and I, we've visited different sites that have this already in place, but also that you talk about often is what does it look like to build a school that also has a range of options, because our students they don't stay, right? I know we said we like the status quo, but they're not in this sort of stagnant space. They don't necessarily all move in a linear way. And so what does it mean to create that kind of environment in a school that allows for the flexibility of a child actually making progress, developing along their continuum, so that we can keep them in that school and not at some point have to send them off again, so that busing becomes a part of it, and the 2-hour commute and all of those things that we see happening.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, and to break this, you know, if you're a student with an IEP and you're doing really well, you got to go. You go elsewhere, right? If you're a student without an IEP and you're doing really well, you're celebrated and lifted to the, you know, lifted and uplifted in your community. And so, to DC Quintana's point, how do we ensure that our buildings are and our schools are really a community where you can grow and thrive and remain, right, with your siblings, and hold your parents' hand and walk to school,
And your neighbors.
right.
Yeah.
Or travel
Or
to
not.
school. Travel to, I got you, Josh. Travel to school. Thank you, Josh. Travel to school.
Independent, right.
I needed to get it a second faster in there, Josh. Thank you. Thank you, Josh.
And that's why we include students on that Special Education
That's
Advisory
right.
Council as well, because we need voices like Josh's and other young people's to make sure that we're remembering the experience of the user, as was said in the last panel. You know, we talk about the 5 districts as potential for us to start doing this work. I don't know how many of you have ever been leaders or are parents, but when you lead a school system at all in any way, you want everything done 2 months ago, right? You want it done yesterday. We're always in a hurry. But change like this takes a lot of time. And I actually, one of the wonderful things, many of the people in this room got to be, last week we went to NYU to celebrate with ASD Nest. The Nest program just turned 20 years old. Nest is one of those examples of what, you know, I heard in the last panel, but also that Christina's been talking about, when we design with everyone in mind and we create the spaces and those general education spaces too that are meant for everyone to really move forward. I think of something like Nest, right, where the way that we even set up our whiteboards or chalkboards, the way that we train everybody in the spaces, the way that we give instructions explicitly, these are things that seem pretty standard or routine, but they don't happen across all schools. The use of common and consistent language across your classrooms, regardless of content area or grade level, right? The fact that we've built in supports, social workers, speech providers, they're built into the program so that kids are getting support, that there is a real thought about socio-emotional well-being and every human being needing some time to sort of decompress or realign and re-enter in some way, right? That we build these in really caring communities to begin with. That's what all schools should look like, feel like. But that takes time. And so maybe thinking about like what will it mean? How can we let folks know that we're on the right path? What do you have planned for us? And I don't know, are you all aware of the different programs that we have available right now? Nest, for example, has an over 90% graduation rate. That's fantastic for students with disability. The children who have autism, who are on the autism spectrum disorder, who are autistic, in our D75 programs, unfortunately right now we're only at 11% graduation rate. So if this is a program that's working, we want to promote it, right? But we have to do it carefully so we get it right. Because the minute we get it wrong, exactly, yes, and then all of a sudden it's a really expensive endeavor that people can throw away and say, yeah, that was last administration's big deal. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the different programs or what you have in mind in terms of the sort of slow rollout?
For the most part, if you need an inclusive program, we have it. We've designed it. Now, to Q's point, though, about universal design for learning, what's been really effective about our specialized programs is that we do all the training centrally, right? And there's a requirement around training, right? There's a 2-week pre-service training. There are intermittent trainings. There's coaching that happens so that the school is not left on their own to decide what best practice looks and sounds like and how it appears for our kids with IEPs. That level, that bar, is something that we do feel sacred to continue to manage while building capacity in the districts. All of that said, you know, part of why
huge reason why the anti-ableist culture is the fifth tenet of the fifth recommendation, is that it can't just be in specialized programs that expertise lives, right? And although we have found that our specialized programs are transformational in terms of changing school culture, and Q can speak to this as well, as a former principal that hosted a NEST program, Q will be the first person to say it changed my whole school, right?
I thought we were a great school. I really did. And we were restorative. We were doing really well in terms of data, had a caring community. And the minute we became a NEST school, we became a great school. Because we really understood what it meant to see and hear everybody. And our kids became advocates for one another. And we shared a campus, and our kids educated kids across the campus. They were the ones that made sure that our school safety agents understood what it meant to be sensitive. And that we started to think about things like timing and space and sometimes things like too much print on our walls that we hadn't considered before, but we should always be thinking about for any of our students. And all of a sudden it became a much, much better, smoother, more inviting space for all of our learners and our teachers. Our teachers actually got better at what they did too. So, if it's something that's going to improve our system as a whole, why wouldn't we invest in this?
Yeah, and you mentioned the graduation rate, and just one add-on. The four-year graduation rate for both NEST and Horizon students is actually 95 to 96%. They are outperforming their non-disabled peers. That is not an accident. That's also not because we cherry-picked them, right? Because that's another thing that people will say is, oh, well, you're cherry-picking these students, and that is not the case. They are, particularly in Horizon, if you look at their needs, their need profiles show up the same as a student with autism in District 75. Right, that is not there. As somebody who has been worked in District 75 and been connected to District 75 for the past 21 years, and as a former principal, right, I definitely understand the nuanced needs of our kids. And I'm telling you that when you walk into a Horizon class in middle school and high school and you hear them speaking Mandarin, telling me about their specialized high school exams, and also telling me what sports they're participating in, right, that's not an accident. That's because their school was designed to fully meet the need of every child, right? And so when we talk about improving special education, and the reason why I feel so passionately looking around this room and looking at the people from the special education office, I could really say that we get the best of the best, because that is where the change has to happen, right? And I also just want to take a moment to thank my team who is here, led by my deputy, John Hammer, and all of the folks across the room who are here, who are fighting for this cause day in and day out. I mean, all Sunday they worked, even though they had done all that they needed to do with Ms. Clark to prepare for today. Yesterday they stopped everything they were doing again because they wanted to make sure that this was going to be the impact. And that's honestly what they do for every day. They stop to get it all done. So thank you to the team. And Michelle Netzler is in the back, who's the most humble person leading the charge on specialized programs. And so I want to name Michelle as being at the forefront of making sure these programs in our schools are successful.
You know that programs like these have evolved over time, right? We just talked about NEST being here for 20 years now. They have strong outcomes and they are sustainable models, but they're not possible without partners. We talked about wanting to partner initially with 5 superintendents, and part of that is to make sure that we have superintendents who are invested and who want to do this work so that it becomes, again, sustainable. We need it to be about thinking about how you train your principals and how they program their schools, how they hire, the language they use, making sure that they really do have caring communities, or that we can build those pieces up, and that together we can actually identify the preconditions or the conditions that are necessary for this to be possible. The other part is making sure that we have strong partnerships outside of the school too. Yep. So Christina, what are some things that you think that maybe folks here can do to get involved? How do we take advantage of the partnerships that we've already established, and some of the folks who often already raise their hands to say, what can I do?
Yeah, I mean, I love this
the concept of of the conditions and preconditions. I think that is true for the city, right? That's true in schools, but as a city, what are the conditions that we need for our students with disabilities and our parents of students with disabilities to grow and thrive? You know, we're talking in planning this event with Ms. Clark. It was really, really important to us that we bring in our agency partners, because the goal of this administration is to take a one city approach to supporting our New Yorkers, right? And if we're going to take a one city approach, then we all have to have the same goals. And so it's really exciting to hear, you know, a panel from across the city talking about travel training and how to make New York City, you know, a fully accessible city, because that's we need our kids to be grown-ups that go to work, right? This is also, though, a way that we're holding each other accountable, right? And so this isn't just a conversation to go share ideas. This is also, let's be frank, you know, this is our attempt to actually call our partners in, but also to make our commitments clear, right? And with you all bearing witness to those commitments and supporting those commitments, I really feel excited about where our city is going for all people with disabilities.
Presentation here from all sides of that. So if we want to start here and introduce yourself, your name, your affiliation, a little bit about the work you do, and we'll go down the panel.
Sure. Hi, good morning. My name is Jonathan Santiago. I'm the Executive Director of the Transition and College Access Centers at the Central Special Education Office. I'm a proud brown Puerto Rican, born in Puerto Rico. As Ms. Lucinda said in the beginning, all Caribbean people are fabulous, and I agree, right? I'm wearing a suit, one of the suits that I can fit into. I just turned 40, and I realized I can't play sports as well as I used to. And I'm a dog dad and a proud member of the Central Special Education team. Thank you for having me today.
Hi, good morning. My name is Janelle Kianis. I work with Access VR. For anybody, yay, woo-hoo! That actually makes me really excited, because most people see Access and they're like, oh, so thank you. For those who don't know, Access VR, formerly known as VESID, if you're an old school person. I've been with the agency now 16 and a half years. I'm an associate vocational rehabilitation counselor. I guess I'm going to go off of Jonathan, and I am a proud Puerto Rican as well. Yes. And I have dark hair, olive skin, wearing a black blazer with a tan shirt, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you very much for the DOE for inviting us.
Hello everyone, my name is Delia Tucker. I am the director of the New York City Regional Office at the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. I'm happy to be here again with you all today. This is a great group, a great space, and it's always a pleasure to be talking with our partners and families. Our office, we have 5 offices across the city. And essentially we help people access supports and services for people with developmental disabilities. So transitions are a really important part of life. My son was actually in the NEST program in an elementary school, and then it wasn't available for him in middle school, so that transition was tough. So I think you know, it's an important conversation, and I'm glad to be here today for that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jerry Piper, and I work with the Turning 5 team, which I'll now refer to as the program that shall not be named, sort of like Voldemort, because it's in transition to be for another name. But the Turning 5 team, working with the youngest students with disabilities that are transitioning to kindergarten, working with the families and setting expectations as to what's going to happen as they transition from preschool special ed to kindergarten special ed, school-aged special ed. I've been doing that since 2015. Before that, I was privileged enough to be a parent coordinator at my child's elementary school in Brooklyn, New York, which was a fantastic experience for me. I'm the father of 3 New York City public school children who are now in their 20s, and it's really great to be here today. Thank you.
thank you all. I would love to have Jerry, since you're at the earliest stage of a child's life, I'd love to have you start this, but feel free if you need time to defer to others. But if you can talk a little bit about how you support families with the transition planning process, and what that looks like, and how you make sure that student voice and family options are centered, and that families know exactly what options are on the table.
Sure. One of the biggest things that we do is each year we provide kindergarten orientation meetings. We'll go out. What we used to do prior to COVID and prior to MS Teams being so useful for digital communication is we used to go out to the 5 boroughs, to schools and to other places and present this transition process for families, which was super because I got a chance to be in front of them and see their faces as I was presenting a tremendous amount of material in just a couple of hours. I think the real bang for the buck during those presentations was families coming forward to ask their individual questions to a panel of experts that we had assembled. The nice thing about working for the Turning 5 process is because it is a bit of a funnel from preschool into school age, there are so many different departments and so many different advocate groups that we work with across all kinds of different departments, that we would assemble that panel and have them present there for families to be able to ask questions. And as I look out, I'd be really careful to watch for those eyes that were glazing over after an hour and a half worth of brand new material for many of these families, and try and adjust the presentation for that, and also knowing that them coming forward at the end of the presentation to get their specific questions answered was really, really valuable. And it's unfortunate now, although there are some benefits to doing the digital presentations. We had 500 families on the call the other night, which is really, really heartening to know so many people stick around. But we've been refining that presentation, and part of my thrust in this department that the Turning 5 team is to try and simplify our message all the time. There's just a tremendous amount of material that's brand new for families that may have just started to get used to preschool special education services, now having to consider kindergarten and the differences between preschool and kindergarten. So the more that we can simplify our message, clarify our message, and I'm working on that each and every time we review the presentation that we give to families. And so that's November and December. And then we also have an inbox, Turning 5, a few different email addresses that we use to allow families to direct questions right to our team to be able to get back to them with some answers.
Thank you, Jerry. Anyone else want to jump in with how you're supporting families with the transition planning process?
Sure, I can start. So at OPWDD, essentially, we want to make sure that parents are understanding what our services are, that they are able to access the resources that they need. We have local school transition coordinators, and they work very closely with local schools to participate either in transition workshops. We want to work with the natural supports that the person has available to them. You know, natural supports meaning like their families, high school counselors, friends, anyone that helps support them in the community. Because really OPWDD services are meant to enhance the natural supports. So it's really important for us to be able to do that outreach. And I think one of the things that we hear a lot is that parents don't know about OPWDD until it's too late, until they've already are transitioning out of high school. So it's really important for us to ensure that there's early contact with our office to go through the process of determining eligibility and subsequently being able to access all of the supports and services to help someone live independently in the community.
I love that you mentioned that. I don't know if you want to piggyback on that and some of the work you're doing together to give that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Jonathan's going to build upon the supports and collaboration with OPWDD that our office and the TCACs are currently engaging in.
Yeah, so the Transition and College Access Centers, or TCACs. So some of the ways that, and I'm going to jump right into OPWDD, but we do offer workshops, transition-focused workshops to students and families and staff, but we do elicit feedback from our families, from our students, to be able to change and update our content, because who knows better than what they specifically need, right? Families and students, right? So we're always eliciting feedback and always making sure that we differentiate all of our workshops and update our workshop content to be able to being student and family focused. Also, one of the partnerships that we have, and we're very proud to be growing this partnership, is with OPWDD, and so we do meet on a regular basis. And one of our main goals is to make sure, as Delia mentioned, that families are aware of OPWDD services as early as possible. So through our joint meetings, we are now going to be, OPWDD, Michelle Giuliano and team are going to be joining us on our TTL meeting, so transition team leaders. Every single high school has them, right? So we're going to be partnering with their transition support folks in their boroughs and with their teams to be able to get all of this information, get all of this knowledge, all this application content out there into the schools as early as possible, so that students and families are aware of the services that are provided. So that's just one of the linkages that we have together, and we're very happy to be growing that partnership.
Do you want to speak to family outreach at all?
Sure. So Access VR has worked really hard in addressing the need of transition. And so Access VR has developed a specialized role we're called statewide youth, transition statewide youth services. There's our senior TAs. And those counselors, their main focus is providing technical assistance and outreaching all schools to provide Access VR services. Along with having this specialized role, every counselor at Access VR has assigned schools, and those people are responsible to go into the community, go into the school, and provide on-site orientations or provide informationals. Really, our focus is to connect as best as possible with the schools. I used to be a counselor in Staten Island, and as a counselor in Staten Island, I also sat in on an OPWDD. We had a once-a-month committee on dealing with transition services. So our focus really is connecting with our community organizations. We work really closely with the TCAC office, and I know I personally sit in on the Brooklyn TTL meetings monthly to provide that support. Along with that outreach, we have orientation videos on our website. We also have we sit on multiple community-based organization meetings. So you can really find our information on the website, along with us going out on, boots on the ground, going out into the community and just kind of spreading the word.
Thank you. I'll pose this to anyone. If you can expand a little bit about how you are centering student voice, or person voice in some cases, not necessarily just students for the youth, but how are you making sure in the services that you're providing that the student's choice and student voice is truly leading the way?
So with access, go ahead.
No. Hold on, just simply. At the TCACs, we make sure that after every single, whether it's a workshop or a personalized transition consultancy, or if a student is participating in one of the work-based learning programs or internship programs, we make sure that we elicit feedback. And that can be through a Microsoft form, or that can be through a one-on-one consultation, but we're always eliciting feedback regarding our programs and how can we better our programs, what do they specifically need, so that we can change and update our programs and what we're delivering to students, so that student voice is truly heard and that our services are student-focused and student-led.
So at Access VR, all services that we provide are covered under what's called an individualized plan of employment. And so each one of those plans is with the development with the customer, which is the student, providing the student gives us permission if they're over the age of 18 to speak to parents. The parents are involved as well. I know that one gets a little hairy when parents are like, wait, I bore this child, but at the end of the day, we want to empower our students to advocate for themselves. Also, one of the, I should have said earlier, one of the biggest pushes that the state has done is we're providing pre-employment services, PREETs for short, and one of those components, there's 5 components that make it up, but one of those components is self-advocacy. And so we really want to promote individuals advocating for themselves, being part of the plan, deciding on what service, knowing that they can decide on a service, and knowing that it's not just this person sitting behind a desk saying this is what you have to do, but it's what it is you want to do.
So I just wanted to piggyback off that. So TCACs also provide pre-ETS services, but where our connection is with Access VR is that not only are we providing the services, but every single eligible student within each of the 5 boroughs, if they're eligible for Access VR services, we're referring them over to Access VR. So we want to make sure that there's that continuum and that line of support and transition.
Right, it's really great because going back to that first one of how we're really engaging, we're starting as young as 14. And if a person under that potentially eligible contract is deemed eligible, they're starting this employment journey at 14. Yeah. And so the hope is that by the time they get ready to transition out of school, they have those foundational skills. They're not just coming to us at 18, 19, 20 when they're graduating, like, I don't know what I want to do. And which is okay if you don't know what you want to do still, but I think starting earlier. We had a DOE representative come years ago to provide an in-service to us. Years ago, maybe I was on the job 5 years, and she said, transition begins at kindergarten. And all of us looked at each other like, and really I think it sat with a lot of us. A lot of it is reshaping our minds and reshaping the way we're providing services, and it really has this potentially eligible contract with the DOE, and they're the ones that are facilitating it for Access VR has really been wonderful.
Yes.
So I'll just mention that at OPWDD, anyone could, at any age, can go through the eligibility process, right? And that's how people can access services. If the child is, if there's a child that's going through the eligibility process prior to the age of 8, then essentially it's considered provisional eligibility given that they're so young. Their clinical needs may change, right? So they have to be go through the eligibility process again after the age of 8. But once that eligibility process occurs, then there essentially are several assessments that really review what the person, what their interests are, what their needs are, and that really helps the development of the life plan through the care coordination organization. And essentially, they really go through, what are the person's dreams? What do they want to accomplish? They do that with their circle of support, obviously, and that's how essentially they discuss what types of OPWDD services they can access. So there may be someone that really just needs, some family support services. So that may be respite or, payment through individual goods and services. There may be someone that really wants assistive technology, really to help them become more independent, or environmental modification support to help accommodate their environment. Or there may be people that are interested in accessing the community in different ways through community habilitation or day habilitation. But there are many others that are interested in employment services, so that's really another option for folks to access supported employment. But really it's through the assessments and the development of the life plan with the individuals or the person's natural supports.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you, Jerry.
Sure.
But just to ask one more question. What are some of the glows and grows that can be supported or expanded or changed in your work? And if you can talk a little bit about how your office, similar to the other panels, how you collaborate with maybe other offices within your agency or with other agencies to make sure there's continuity and success.
Sure. One of the glows, I suppose, is we meet on a regular basis with a coalition of advocacy groups. This is called T5 Arise, and they can be really, really tough on us, being part of a bureaucracy and having to do things the way that we do them. So when we can get a win with them every once in a while, they're pleased with something that we've done. It's really tremendous. And case in point, there is we began to color code the mailings that we would send out to families. They receive a slew of mailings over the course of the year. They're all important. They all need to be read and understood. And when we began to color code them with colored paper, that made a big difference, because you could say to a parent, instead of they got this particular prior written notice with a strange name, you could say, did you get the yellow letter? Did you get the green letter? And that made a big difference as far as communicating with families, and our advocates were happy about that. So that kind of win was really good. They're very tough on us. We work with CSAs, with district committees on special ed, with school leadership teams, supervisors, psychologists, central administrators, to make sure that we're addressing the families. We talked before about making sure student voices. Our students are the youngest students, so it's really family voices that we're making sure that we're hearing, and we do that through that collaboration with those groups.
Appreciate that. Anyone else want to jump in on glows or grows or areas for increased collaboration?
Yeah, so I definitely want to say one of the glows that we've had is expanding partnerships for students with our work-based learning and internship program. So we have been expanding our partnerships with the NYPD, Con Edison, the Bronx Zoo. But expanding partnerships is one thing, right? But we want to make sure that while we're expanding these partnerships, that these are the type of jobs that students really are interested in and want to do, right? So we can have partnerships and we can expand partnerships, but what good is expanding partnerships if they're not connected to what the student wants to do after they leave high school? And one thing that we also took a step back and started to really focus on is that there's not one set pathway for a student. Regarding regarding transitioning out of high school, right? Some students definitely want to be work in a big business. Some students want to work in a vocational program, right? We have electricians and other unionized jobs that really are setting up students for success and for financial security for the rest of their lives. So there's also college, right? There's also independent living. So one of our goals is that we definitely have taken a step back and looked at making sure that we are supporting all students in each of the different pathways. Also, one of the goals that I did want to mention is that our continuing and expanding partnerships with Access VR, with OPWDD, with Include NYC, and others. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot, but we're very happy about our growing partnerships and also community-based organizations, right? So we definitely want to make sure that we have partnerships in all facets of organizations and the services that they provide our students.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to the partnership component, right? I think, nothing happens without relationship building, right? So it's really important to ensure that we, as an office, are connected with our local partners. I see many of them here today, so I'm glad that they're all here. But it's really important to be, we work so closely together on so many issues, right? And we all want the same goal. We want to support people. We want to make sure that people have access. We want to make sure that there's equity in the services that they get. So we work with our, provider partners, but we also work with families, right? Family groups. They're obviously the most important voice in this. Through our developmental disabilities councils, we, present each month, and we ensure that our staff are connected, because that's how people get information, right? And it's really important for us to be, if I could, I would have. I would add more staff to this, right? I would say, we would be in every single school, and we're getting to that point, right? We are working to make sure that we connect with every single District 75 school, but there's more to this work than just that, right? So that is where we love to grow, to make sure that our outreach is available and accessible to others. We want to be able to have a streamlined process so that people really understand how they can get connected, because that's often what we hear from folks is that it's complicated, right? The system is complicated. So we want people to really have clear information, which, by the way, I've shared with others today, and so there's some really nice handouts that families could have to understand transitional planning.
Anything you want to add?
I was just going to say that it's no secret that I work for the state, and the state has sometimes had a bad rap. And I think that our current administration has really heard that. And we have really been invested in getting a lot of feedback. And our current administration and central office does a lot of town halls, meetings with our stakeholders and our community organizations. Sometimes, being self-reflective is not easy, but it's necessary. And as an agency, we really have heard a lot of feedback and have really started implementing it. And I could say for at least the last 8-10 years, we have really tried to shift our mindset, shift even, just normal verbiage. Or what we thought was normal verbiage, but was offensive verbiage, And so we really have taken an approach of how can we be really flexible? Because folks think that Access VR is not. We establish barriers. So how can we remove those barriers so we could provide the service that helps individuals really with self-sufficiency? For a long time, we were employment driven. Folks had to get work, and so as counselors, we're like, gotta get you to work. But we were missing out on all those little, not little, huge milestones, the outcomes of achievements. Somebody getting a high school diploma, yay. Somebody, being able to get a specific certification, wonderful. Like, why are we, I think for a long time we were putting ourselves in a box. And so we have some really great leadership. I have my regional coordinator here with us today, who has really made our agency more reflective of the community. And it's not, I think a lot of times folks came in and they didn't feel like they could relate. And so now we're becoming, I think, more relatable.
I love that. I love that as an ending point. I unfortunately have to leave it there, but I think it speaks, this panel as well as all of the panels today. I'm just so grateful for everyone's openness and willingness to be here. And I think that relatable sense comes from these kinds of gatherings when we can all get together and openly discuss what we do and how we can partner with each other and how we can increase access for the people we serve. So thank you all so much. Give it up for this panel.